Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on this video. My name is Chris. I recently just got done watching Marvel's Eternals, and with this latest installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we follow a group of immortal beings that have been on Earth for 7,000 years, living amongst us, helping us shape some of our history, and in this 2.5-hour runtime, director Chloe Zhao will do her best to mash 7,000 years worth of Marvel history into one singular film. That's all pretty much said without giving any spoilers to you guys. This is a spoiler-free review, and man, Eternals has just been a hot topic of conversation, and it's about to get even more wild. I want to go ahead and address the elephant in the room that this is turning out to be one of the first MCU movies to have a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes. And look, you can say what you want or not from Rotten Tomatoes. I know there's a group of people out there who just love to hate the website, but to me, hating on Rotten Tomatoes is a lot like hating on your mailman because he was the one that brought you your latest bill. People still think that Rotten Tomatoes is a group of people that get together in a circle and go, how good was this movie? 52% good? Alright, that's what we'll put on the website. When no, it's a system that gets a bunch of critics from all different platforms all around the internet, get their opinion on whether they liked the movie or didn't like it, and then generate a score from there. So what we're seeing right now is out of 182 reviews, 97 people out of that 182 thought the movie was good and enjoyed it, and then 85 people decided, no, wasn't for me, and that's how we got a score like this. And the reason I'm bringing this up is just because I want you guys to be aware of how Rotten Tomatoes works, because it's going to be a huge topic of conversation after this movie. But the other reason I bring this up is because with Eternals, it was never a movie I was really excited to watch in the MCU. Don't get me wrong, I love Marvel movies and I'm always down to check them out, but I was never over the moon with everything going on with Eternals, even with its amazing cast, its very talented director. Then witnessing those first couple of trailers, I was just kind of meh on the whole situation, and it wasn't until all these divisive opinions coming out of the movie where I was like, oh, now I'm curious to see what's up with this film. And yeah, now having seen the movie, I could definitely see where a lot of those divisive opinions are coming from, making me want to start this review off a little differently, where I jump into some of the negatives about this movie. Eternals turned out being a much bigger movie than I was expecting. Like, there is so much going on in Eternals that it's kind of hard to digest everything being thrown at you. Like I was mentioning, the movie is 2.5 hours long, and they're gonna jam-pack so much story into one movie, it's extremely overwhelming. And that should kind of make sense, okay? Because the route they decided to go with Eternals is telling the story of these group of immortals who have been on Earth for 7,000 years, and the movie tries to do its best to give you that entire history of what they've been doing for those 7,000 years. But it's not even just that, you also have to fit in the lore of how these Eternals were created, why they're on Earth, who exactly is the villain of the movie, and at times the movie is just explaining it to you, and I could see a lot of people just being completely lost, and after a certain point of just so much information being thrown at your face, you're kind of like, I'm full, please stop handing me food. One of the biggest things I felt coming out of Eternals, if you tried packing in all the story elements they were trying to tell in a book, and that was originally the source material everything was coming from, you would look at that book and go, man, if they ever made a movie out of that book, it would have to be 2 movies. There's no way you could tell all that story into one movie. But they tried to. And that's why Eternals was one of the first Marvel movies that did feel a little sloppy to me, that the pacing is kind of all over the place, specifically in the very beginning of the movie, because stuff just goes on rolling, and if you're not rolling along with the movie, you're not going to enjoy the second half of this film as much. And expanding further on the lore and all this new backstory that they've now added to the MCU, it's made everything that's happened before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe feel so minuscule. Like, the threat going on in Eternals is so huge and on a grand scale that it makes the fight in Avengers Endgame feel like a little playground school tussle between a couple of kids. And that is the level of a threat we're facing in Eternals, and I just did not know how to take that in. This movie really kind of puts things in perspective and makes you go, what the heck is the point of these heroes even being out there when stuff like this exists? Still, I guess that is just the beauty about Eternals, that it steps away from the Marvel formula, where the movie does just feel so entirely different and new and hinges on the shoulders of a bunch of unknown characters, where Marvel really took gigantic risks and said, hey, we're several movies in, we got a loyal fan base, we can throw them this stuff and they'll handle it. So I'm not surprised at all that there's a lot of people out there that did not end up loving Eternals and the massive story it was trying to tell, and couldn't get into all the new lore and details being thrown into the MCU that felt really like it came out of nowhere. However, even with that stuff bugging me about the movie and me being completely aware of why some people don't like it, I ended up really liking this movie, where I'm at the point of saying, I think I loved it. The saving grace to me for Eternals was the damn characters, okay? I like all these new people that were introduced in Eternals. Chloe Zhao did a fantastic job of developing these immortal beings that have been alive for thousands of years and giving them their each own backstory that the movie starts to unravel piece by piece, each one of them having their own separate relationships and character evolutions throughout the film that I was completely glued to the screen with. Standout characters for me had to be people like Kumail Nanjiani. He's as hilarious as you would expect him to be. Brian Tyree Henry as this sort of engineer character for the Eternals also had a super intriguing backstory of how he wanted to help mankind. Lauren Rildolph's character, who plays a speedster in the MCU, mainly speaking through sign language. Believe me when I say I loved every single one of the Eternals. Those were the ones that just stood out to me the most, but the dynamic they have as a family really worked well. I also love the approach of each one of them getting their own power set and how they use that throughout the film. While I mentioned I was not completely on board with the way they handled the lore storytelling and where these Eternals come from, who's in charge of them, who the bad guys is they're after, it was the story of them being alive for 7,000 years, how that has affected them internally, how they perceive the human race, how that even changed some relationships within the group of the Eternals, where some of them would stay friends, others would break up. That's what had me absolutely loving this movie, is just the character study on these group of people that have been alive for so long. I really was able to feel the love some characters had for another, along with also the pain they were going through in the struggle they were facing. It's the heart of that movie, and it's really what made this one feel so special and unique to me. And ultimately, that is what saved this movie for me, is the heart of the characters and how that just spills out on screen to the audience. And I think that'll be the thing that'll make or break this movie for you, because if you're someone who watches this movie and you can't find a connection with any of these characters or even feel intrigued with the backstory going on with them, this movie is going to be a tough watch for you, and you might end up being bored through a lot of it. So much so that even though I'm on the camp of really liking Eternals because of the characters, and I'd be happy to see this movie again, I don't know if I'm that excited for a continuation of this specific story and lore that they've set up. I'd be down to see these characters again because I love them, but part of me would have been very happy if this ended up being a one and done movie. So with Eternals, I'm going to give action 4 stars here. Even though this is a longer movie, is very focused on character study, throwing in so much lore, the action set pieces are pretty amazing. The utilization of all the powers from different Eternals was awesome, especially that end battle, so you will be getting plenty of action thrown in here. Comedy in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2.5 stars. It does have that Marvel sense of humor, a lot of it coming from Kumail Nanjiani's character, but I would say this is one of the more serious Marvel movies that perfectly balances the amount of humor it has. Drama in the movie, I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars here. Look, there is so much story, so much history being thrown at your face in Eternals, it just doesn't get perfectly executed in this 2.5-hour runtime. It will leave a lot of people confused and overwhelmed, but at the end of it, I do think the story going on with the characters themselves, if you end up liking them, does save the movie. Horror in the movie, I'm gonna give it 0.5 star. There really isn't anything to be scared here in this film. It's a Marvel movie. I will say there is one jump scare in Eternals that got me though. And suspense in the movie, I'm actually gonna give it 3.5 stars because you are just so in awe of the story going on. You don't really know how they plan to wrap things up and who's gonna make it out of this movie, which was kind of refreshing for a Marvel film. Casual fans into the MCU, I'm gonna give it a B-. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it a B-. And critically, I'm going to give it a C+. For Marvel's Eternals, I think it's such a grand epic story that deserves to be seen in theaters. Even with all its flaws, issues, and just overpacking a lot of stuff into one movie, I still think it's a good film, not trash at all, anything that needs to be disregarded, but I definitely think this is just the start of Marvel testing out some ambitious storytelling that not everyone's gonna love from here on out. Those are just my thoughts on Eternals though. I want to hear from you guys. If you got around to watching this movie, what did you end up thinking it? Were you on the camp of liking the movie? If you did, for what reasons? And if you were on the camp of not liking the movie, I would also love to know what exactly turned you away from it. I think everything, be sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films and on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.